What is up, you all? We're back with another video, and today we're going to be explaining the ending with Zach Cregger's new horror movie, Weapons. Before we get into it, definitely smash the like button because it definitely helps, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. So to get into this movie, man, this movie right here is by far one of my favorite horror movies of this year. I really enjoyed it, and I was anticipating this to be good. I'm not a fan of Barbarian, but I absolutely loved Weapons, and the story was telling, the characters and everything. Now obviously, if you haven't seen this movie, you should want to step away because we're going to be talking about heavy spoilers. So to get into this, I did not see this reveal coming, but I also thought of, this reveal because I've heard rumors about, like Witchcraft and everything, and I just didn't see the hints in the trailer, and it just blew me away getting this reveal, finding out that Miss Gladys was actually the witch, or whatever you want to call her. I'm not gonna lie, yes, she was indeed a witch. And when you sit here and think about everything with this movie, man, just the lead up, the suspense, everything that we saw, it all made his way of building itself up to that point of us getting that reveal. And we know that Miss Gladys basically said that she was Aunt Gladys to Alex, and she was in their family. But a part of me, when it comes down to this story, man, is telling me that she actually had a crazy backstory, because she came out of nowhere, and then she was saying like she was sick and everything. She was dealing with a lot, and then as soon as she gets comfortable in the house, the next morning Alex wakes up to his parents, or I think it was a couple mornings later, where they're like stuck in this trance at a table, and he's having to feed them chicken noodle soup, and they're stabbing herself in the face with a fork. And one thing I thought was crazy about this movie Weapons was the formula to get everybody in this trance, where we see at a point, remember, we go over to Andrew's house, the principal of Maybrook School, and she knocks on the door, and she was like, "Can I get a cup of water?" And she says she doesn't have a way home, and then she gets in the kitchen, and then she has like this branch, and she pokes herself. So the formula is you have a little bit of blood, some water, and like something that's close to that person. It doesn't have to be hair, it's just something that that is close to that person, like an item or something. And then once she snaps it, it's almost like this person becomes like a weapon. That's why the movie is called Weapons. Like, it's a missile. It's on track to take out a person. That's the vibes that I was getting. I think they even kind of made like a example of what I'm saying about the missile and how it's on track to get its subject. I think that actually Archer brought that up. Now, one thing I want to say is with Justine Gandy, I really did love her character, and I think what Weapons was trying to tell us was that every time some things happen, a lot of people try to pin stuff on one person to make themselves feel good, and just make the situation seem like it's not what it is. And that's what Weapons was. They were trying to make it seem like it was the teacher whole time. If you sat back and look at the situation with the 17 kids going missing at 217 or whatever, it was definitely bigger than her. I definitely see where they were trying to bring things up to her because it was in her classroom, and then the other teachers had their students, so it kind of looked a little suspicious. But I'm not gonna lie, the fact that I would have been looking at Alex also, because why didn't you go missing? Every student went missing but Alex. That was actually weird. Now, one thing I want to get into is this character James, played by Austin Abrams. Man, I actually loved him in this movie, man. And I think that whole POV story of him, or how he was actually on drugs and everything, and he was doing anything to get a hit of drugs. He was stealing, he was breaking and entering, he was doing burglary, and then to the point he ends up breaking into the house where everything takes place at, and he sees everything firsthand. Like, he sees the kids in the basement stuck in his trance or whatever, and he's willing to tell to get this $50,000 reward. I think the way that Weapons domino was such, it was fluid, it was suspenseful. Yeah, we had dreadful moments, but I think the dread was worth it because it was all about us getting built up to that moment where we found out that actually Gladys was the witch behind everything. And I think the way they actually portrayed witchcraft in this story, it actually made me just start to think about how dark things like this can get. And when, you know, you think of witches, it's always something with kids involved, even back to the older Halloween movies and things like that. So I think it just goes back to that too, just the blueprint of witches and how, you know, they feed off children and things like that, because that's exactly what Gladys was doing. Because you remember, Alex goes in that room and he sees her true form, where she's bald and, you know, she's praying and doing like this ritualistic stuff, and he's like, what's wrong? You know, to the hospital. She's like, no, I need you to go to school and get a item from each one of your classmates and it will help me. He's like, why? And then we find out that basically, you know, she's doing like this witchcrafty stuff where she's ripping up their name tags and putting it in this pot, and it's giving her life, it's giving her fuel. She's basically, you know, sucking the life out of these kids while they're in the basement just getting fed chicken noodle soup and things like that. The best way I can say what Aunt Gladys was, she was a parasite. She was feeding off these kids. Just her, you know, getting Alex's parents wasn't enough. She even tells Alex that, she says, I thought that, you know, me just getting your parents, I will be good off that, but I guess not. I need more. So it seems that, you know, when we sit back and look at, you know, Gladys, she's been doing this for a while. This is how she's been surviving, you know. And a part of me, it kind of seems like, was she actually in her family? Did she lie somehow? Did she pull like a Visit, the movie The Visit, where she's lying about being in her family, and she just had to kind of play, you know, this role where she's jumping from house to house to get what she needs, you know what I'm saying? But I will say, she definitely gives me like that vibe that Long Legs gave us in the Long Legs movie. It's like this eerie, I don't even know what to call it, just unsettling and eerie, the way she smiles, her hair, the way she operates. And it was just something how, you know, it was just something about knowing that she was an actual like witch, and, you know, just us following her through the story, and she's walking around like she's like a everyday grandmother or auntie or something, but the whole time she's this old evil woman with bad intentions, bro. You remember what she said to Alex at the table? If you tell anybody about what I'm doing in this house, I can make your parents eat each other if I want to. Like, that's actually something that a witch will say, man. And just, you know, diving a little deeper into the end and explained, we see that at a point, you know, that Justin Gandy, and we see that Archer comes up to the point where they're like, okay, we looked at this map, because Archer came up with an idea where, hey, if I get all this rings camera footage and I kind of lock them all in together, it can kind of show me the direction. Remember, he has this dream and he sees his son Matthew, and it's like a AR that's pointing up in the air, and it's showing like where basically the direction is, and it was like a dream sequence. And the AR, from the vibes what I got, it was signifying like school shootings, because this took place in Maybrook Elementary, and that's why I showed that. It was like supposed to be like the arrow or direction. Now, once he kind of found out, which was smart, it was smart as hell, because without Archer, I'm not gonna lie, they would have found the house and everything because of James. But matter of fact, I don't know, because James got took out with the cop Paul, so it probably would have been over. But once Archer kind of put two and two together, and he told Justine, like, man, you know, these directions that our kids are running to is aiming up to this direction, they're going straight like a missile, so they gotta go to this direction. And Justine put two and two together, like, okay, that's Alex's house. This is the house that I was just at with the newspapers covering the windows, so this has to be something that's going on in this house. Which, I'm not gonna lie, Andrew, you should have been all over it as the principal. I mean, you know, I feel like he was trying to be, you know, on it, but it was just something where he just didn't want to get involved really. And that's why it happened the way it happened with him, where actually Miss Gladys comes up to his house. He's still listening to her. She's telling him, I'm going to bring the dad to the school. At the end of the day, bro, the vibes was weird, and she's so smart. And remember, we see Andrew's like achievement ribbons in his office. She takes them because she doesn't need hair, she doesn't need fingernails or nothing like that. She just needs something that's a part of that person. And that's how she put him in a trance, where he actually takes, you know, off and try to chase Miss Gandy through the gas station and everything. That part was actually crazy. And like I said, there was a lot of humor in this movie. It was funny, you know, it was a lot of things that was going on that I really did enjoy. I love the characters, and like I said, the overall overall reveal was so elite and executed so well, man. This is by far one of my favorite movies. It's already a classic. Like, it's gonna be like those movies like your Pet Cemeteries and The Shining and The Conjuring. It's definitely gonna be in that realm, man. Like, we're gonna be talking about this movie for the rest of our life. I feel like Zach Cregger's has definitely did it, you know. And to get into that ending where Alex actually steals the hair from Mrs. Gandy, he locks himself in the bathroom because at this point everything is hitting the fan. Justine is going up against Archer because Archer has now been put under one of her spells trying to take out Justine. And then we have James. He keeps coming back and forth. He gets knocked down and he gets up. That scene was crazy. I don't know how many times Archer just threw him over the table. So he's like, you know what? Alex gets this branch and he remembers where he's seen Aunt Gladys do, like how she pricks herself and breaks the stick. And so he does that formula, like using the toilet water and all this craziness, and he breaks it, and then it actually you know, sets these kids up to chase Aunt Gladys out the house. Like, now the kids turn on her, and that was probably one of the most satisfying feelings ever as a horror fan, just seeing the kids actually take her out, man. Just take out Aunt Gladys and just really rip her to shreds. It was such a brutal scene, seeing the skin get ripped apart, the eyes. And I absolutely love the scene of her getting chased through the neighbors' houses and through these like balcony doors, and they're like really like dedicated to taking her out like a missile, and she just running for her life, man. And I just think at that point it was just so eerie, even the way it ended, when we find out after the spell was broke or whatever with the witchcraft, that we found out the kids, some of the kids didn't even go back to their regular lives, man. They couldn't speak or nothing. They did not, you know, go back to how they used to be. Even though the spell was broke or whatever, they didn't go back to how they was. But I think it was because they was under it a little too long, and that's why Alex ended up going to move with his other aunt. You peep how they said other aunt, almost like, is the other aunt sisters with Aunt Gladys? Are we gonna get a weapons too? I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't be mad if this was the only one, because man, it's just one of those movies, man, where it's like it can only just be one, man, for real. But it was kind of a tease from Zach Cregger's. I did, like I said, love Alex's character once we got into his POV, because we know that this was shot in chapters with the characters. Once we got into Alex's POV, it was truly heartbreaking, man. Just seeing him and just seeing his story, how everything happened with his parents and how he's getting bullied in school and things like that. And I think that's why he accepted that offer from Aunt Gladys when she's like, go to school, get the items from your students in your class, and you know, bring them back to me. I think it was like he didn't want to do it because everybody wasn't bullying him in class, but he just felt that he didn't have no friends, you know. And I think that, you know, this story is just one of them stories that's going to always stick. Yes, the fact that it's a witch story and a witchcraft is involved and everything, I think that makes it so special and original. And Aunt Gladys is now one of my favorite villains in the horror movie. Her vibes, her smile, the creaky voice, her walking with the hunch, even the bald version of her, like with the hair sticking out and the strands, and she just was so evil. She had such an evil spirit. But overall, yes, what we were dealing with in Weapons was definitely something that was dark. It was witchcraft, and it was coming through Aunt Gladys. She was the reason, and Alex, sad to say, actually played a part in it by being forced by his Aunt Gladys. So he knew the whole time. So the whole time we were seeing Miss Gandy follow him and everything, he knew what was going on because it was in his household. And I loved how Zach Cregger's decided to switch different angles with shots to tell people's story from different POVs, and it all came together in the end. So yeah, man, overall I really did enjoy Zach Cregger's Weapons. The ending once again was bad shit, bro, and I just think, like, imagine if Alex would have never went and completed the formula that he saw his Aunt Gladys do. They would have been fried. Justine Gandy would have been cooked. Archer would have been cooked. Everybody would have been cooked. But I'm not gonna lie, even if you notice when Alex is in the bathroom, he's with his parents, he had to go live with his aunt because his parents are not the same no more either. So it's like, once you're under the spell, I guess, like, it was like a bittersweet ending when you come back, it's not guaranteed you're going to be back to how you were. So it was one of those endings where you get the satisfaction, but it's still sad. So yeah, you all comment down below, how do you feel about Zach Cregger's Weapons, man? Once again, this is one of my favorite horror movies I've seen this year. Let me know down in the comments. Unfortunately, this is the end of this video. I want y'all to hit me up on all my social medias at ILIKESCARY, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.